So with the transfer window closing last week, I thought that now would be a good time to go through every single Championship club's summer business. I'll be giving them a ranking out of 10 as to how I think they've done, because we've had some clubs who I think have absolutely smashed it in this window and others who could be getting left behind. Let me know in the comments down below, what would you give your club as a ranking out of 10 for your summer business? Also, feel free to leave in the comments down below what you made of your team's performance last night in the Carabao Cup. We had some interesting games going on. But if you do go on to enjoy today's video, make sure you do leave a like, make sure you subscribe for some regular Championship content as well. We'll just be going through the league in a random order, so without any further ado, let's hop into my rankings. So we'll start things out with Reading, who had one of the most bizarre transfer windows in the whole of the league. At the start of the summer, they were under a soft transfer embargo, and then at the end of the window, after deadline day, they ended up spending over 10 million. So a really bizarre one, but looking at the incomings and their squad compared to last season, I think they have got significantly stronger. Going forward, especially, Lucas João already got his first goal for the club, scoring on his debut against Hull. They signed Puskas as well, who Birmingham were after for quite a while. He scored in the Carabao Cup the other night. They've upgraded their defence with re-signing Matt Miazga for this season and bringing in Michael Morrison as well. Goalkeeper, there's maybe a few question marks over. Joe Virginia, I know he's only had 2 games in the league so far, but he has looked less than convincing. I think that over time, Raphael probably will be their number one. Overall, I think it's been a decent window for Reading. I think they possibly could have had a couple more players leave, and I think they still got a bit of dead wood in that squad. I'm still not sure about the signing of Charlie Adam, but overall, I think they've done well this window. For Reading, I'll give them an 8 out of 10. Next up, we'll switch over to Huddersfield Town, who I think the opposite of Reading really had a bit of a disaster of a window. I look at the other 2 clubs who were relegated from the Premier League, and I think that they've done everything in their power to make sure that they'll be within touch of the top 6 next season. I don't get that impression with Huddersfield after the window that they've just had. The deal for Isaac Mbenza, who was on loan there last season, become permanent. They spent £11 million on him, which I find absolutely baffling. They brought in a couple of free transfers, the likes of Tommy Elphick and Reece Brown, a couple of loan deals as well. But I do still think there are some areas of weakness in that Huddersfield squad which they failed to address. Losing Aaron Moy for the season, who's gone out on loan to Brighton, is going to be an absolutely massive miss for them. I see their midfield as a bit of a weakness now. I'm not sure where their creativity is going to come from this season. I've not really been impressed with their incomings. Overall for Huddersfield, I'm going to give them a 4 out of 10. I don't think they've done enough in this window. Quite similar to recent years, Nottingham Forest once again have had an absolutely massive turnover of players, and it's not really a sustainable way to go about a club. I think that Forest need to just stick to one model and then just run for it for the next few years, really, because we can't keep having this constant change at Nottingham Forest. But looking at some of their incomings, I do like some of the players they have gone for, although there are still a number of unknowns with some of the other players that have come in. They've seriously bolstered their midfield. They've got a lot more options in there at the moment. They've added a few more wide players with the likes of Amiobi and Adoma coming in, a few more goalkeepers coming into the squad as well. There's too many unknowns for Forest, and for that reason, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. It could really go either way with that squad this season. You do feel in some areas they've gone for sort of quantity over quality, but time will tell on that, and they could have picked up some gems, who knows. Charlton had a bit of a crazy window, really. At the start of the window, it was shaping up to be a bit of a disaster for them. They let a lot of people go, quite a few people left on free transfers who played a large part of their promotion season, and it took a bit of time for Charlton's window to really get going, but in the final few days, I think they really did pull it out of the bag, and they've given themselves a good chance of survival with some of the players they brought in. Midfield's looking stronger now. They brought in Josh Cullen, who was on loan there last season. Kyle's coming from Brighton, Sam Field as well. Probably the best bit of business they did do, though, was keeping hold of Lyle Taylor. I don't think that they would have been able to replace his goals on the budget they're working on. They're still waiting on confirmation as to whether they completed the signing of Thomas Hemed or not. I think that if that one does get over the line, then it'll be a successful window for Charlton. They were never going to go out and spend a fortune. That was never going to happen. So judging by their expectations and what they're hoping to achieve this season for Charlton, I'll give them a 7 out of 10. I think they've done fairly well. Cardiff have had a bit of a weird transfer window because I like some of the players they brought in, but I can't help but feel like they're still light in a couple of positions, as well as letting go of Bobby Reid on transfer deadline day. I still can't get over that one. I really thought he'd be massive for Cardiff this season, and I know that he doesn't necessarily fit into a Warnock system, but with a player of his talent, he's the sort of player that you want to build the squad around. He's got guaranteed goals in this league, but Warnock's decided to go the other way. I like the additions of Will Vokes and Marlon Pack to strengthen them in the middle. Glatzel and Vassell have come in up front to hopefully offset the loss of someone like Bobby Reid to add more goals to that side. It's been an interesting window for Cardiff. Overall for them, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I can't help but feel like they could have done a little bit more. The squad, the starting 11 is still looking fairly strong, but there's a couple of unknowns in there. Birmingham are another one of the clubs in the league who have had to be careful with their finances over the past few years, but they've really splashed out this season on Ivan Sunjic for about £7 million. Interestingly enough, Birmingham have dipped into the Spanish market in this transfer window. Some players will probably make it at Birmingham, others probably won't. loan. Fran Villalba, I've heard good things about from his debut against Bristol City. Looking forward to seeing how he gets on over the season. Obviously, the main loss for Birmingham is going to be Chelham's, and strike is an area where I think they failed to address in this window. You know, if someone like Djukovic does get injured, they really are looking stretched going forward. You know, I was surprised they let go of Vassell, really. I do like all the other additions they made to the squad, and I do think that the core group of players is looking stronger than last season, but because they failed to get a striker, I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10. I've liked the business they have done, but they're still looking a little bit light going forward. Fulham, I think, have had a really exciting transfer window with the players they brought in, especially going forward. You know, they got the likes of Bobby Reid, Ivan Cavallero, Anthony Knockout, and they managed to keep hold of Mitrovic. Their attacking lineup's absolutely ridiculous going into this season. I also really like the additions they made in midfield as well. Harrison Reed had 2 very successful loan spells out to the Championship already. He's got a lot of energy in midfield. He'll complement someone like Tom Kenny very well, as will Harry Arter. I think those 2 are very sensible options for Fulham this season. Josh Onomah, a bit more of a wild card as to how he'll do this season, but if he can fit in and chip in with a goal here or there, I think that'll be a success. The only thing with Fulham, and the problem that I've got with their transfer window, is they failed to address their back line, which was a major issue for them last season. So it's been a really weird odd transfer window, because you can see they've got an abundance of goals in there, but at the back this season, with them not addressing it, I'm still not sure how they'll fare there. So overall for Fulham, I'll give them an 8 out of 10, because I do think the players they brought in are of a very high standard, and for that reason I think they will be up there at the top of the Championship this season. But without addressing their defence, that's what's holding them back from me giving them a 9 or a 10. Leeds had a really quiet transfer window. I do like some of the additions they have brought in. It's sort of more quality over quantity for Leeds in this window, signing the likes of Helder Costa, who I do think will be big for them this season, Eddie Nketiah, who's coming to replace Kamal Roof. Although they did fail to address losing Pontus Jansson, failing to bring in an experienced centre-back, they have got Ben White on loan for the season, but I see that being a little bit of an area of weakness for Leeds. And in a couple of positions, if injuries do accumulate like they did last season, I'm not quite sure how they're going to do to replace them. Bielsa's going to have to work his magic. Probably the best thing that Leeds did throughout this window was keeping hold of the likes of Pablo Hernandez and especially Calvin Phillips. At one point it looked almost certain like Leeds would be losing him, so to keep hold of him for the time being will be massive for them going forward into this season, and because of the players they have kept hold of, it gives them a chance of promotion this year. For Leeds overall, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I don't think it was brilliant for them, but it wasn't a disaster. Blackburn are another interesting one because they started the window out fairly promising actually. With the signing of Sam Gallagher, they added experience into their midfield with the likes of Stuart Downing and Bradley Johnson, but I think that Blackburn last season identified their defence as a bit of a weakness for them. They let Charlie Mulgrew go out on loan on deadline day and didn't really replace him. If Lenihan picks up an injury this season, then I'm not sure how they'll fare defensively, Blackburn, and I was surprised that they didn't add in another couple of centre-backs. I do like the signing of Greg Cunningham. I still hold him as one of the best left-backs in the league, but I can't help but feel like defence should have been a higher priority for Blackburn in this window. Overall for them, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I like some of the additions they've added going forward, but once again, similar to some other clubs, they could have done a little bit more. On the whole, I think that Wigan have had a fairly successful transfer window. They've cleared quite a bit of the deadwood that was there from last season, and they've added real quality into some positions. The likes of Jamal Lowe, a lot of Championship clubs chasing after him. I think that if utilised in the right way, could be a very effective player for them this season. Kiefer Moore, someone who I've always liked. Preston had been linked to him in previous transfer windows. I think he'll fit in well with Wigan. They've strengthened their midfield and defence as well. I think the club has shown ambition with the money that's been spent there this summer, and it's really all just about can Paul Cook get the best out of this group, because I think they've done well. Overall for Wigan, I'll give them an 8 out of 10. Bristol City is probably one of the toughest clubs to give a ranking to, because I really don't know which way to sway with this one. I like some of the additions they made. The likes of Thomas Callas, bringing him in on the permanent's massive for them. Jada Silva and especially Casey Palmer, I'm also a massive fan of. They've taken a risk on a couple of other European midfielders. One of the main things about this window for Bristol City though has been some of the outgoings. They did lose Adam Webster. Lloyd Kelly left earlier on in the window. Marlon Pack left on deadline day. I'm still a little bit surprised about that one, but I suppose looking at the squad, they do have options to replace him now. And I was really surprised that they let Jamie Patterson go out on loan to Derby in the end. That was one that really seemed to call me off guard. I think that the success of this window for Bristol City will really be determined by how successful Benica Phobie is on that loan spell there. You know, they were in need of another striker. They got one over the line, albeit a striker who hasn't been great in his, last season he wasn't brilliant for Stoke. Maybe he'll rip it up for Bristol City though, who knows. Overall for City, I'll give them a 7 out of 10. I like the additions they've made. We're losing Webster though, it could go either way for Bristol City this year. It's been a really odd transfer window. When you talk about Swansea's transfer window, you need to look into the players they've lost, obviously. With the likes of Ollie McBurney and Daniel James, that's going to leave a bit of a hole in the squad. However, I think there is the hope at Swansea that they already had the players in the squad to go ahead and replace those players. With Ollie McBurney, Swansea fans will be hoping that Borja Baston can make the step up this season. season. They've also brought in Sam Sturridge on loan from Bournemouth to hopefully offset that loss of goals. I like the addition of Christopher Pedersen coming in for a fairly cheap deal. Also, Kalulu comes in and adds a little bit of pace. They've looked to really utilise the loan market in this window, Swansea, and overall, I'll give them a 6 out of 10. I think it could have been a lot worse, and the players they brought in on loan could absolutely go and smash it for them this season. It's just a question of how Swansea will fare in the long run this season. Considering the financial restraints that Sheffield Wednesday have had to work under, I think they've been very successful in this transfer window, and everything that's gone on over the summer with them, you know, losing Steve Bruce, it was shaping up to be maybe a bit of a disaster of a season for them, but I think especially with some of the deals they did late on in that window, they really pulled it out of the bag. The big departure from Wednesday this season has been Lucas Jal, but that didn't really come as a massive surprise to Wednesday fans. The club knew they needed to let go of a couple of their strikers, and I really like some of the options they've added into that squad. They've added pace from wide areas, which has been something that Wednesday have been crying out for the last few seasons, with the likes of Jacob Murphy and Kadeem Harris coming in. Massimo Luongo is a brilliant addition into their midfield. Julian Borner, really good on the free. And for what Wednesday have had to work with, I think it's been a very successful transfer window for them. I'll give them an 8 out of 10. Good stuff from Wednesday. Next to Preston North End, I think all Preston fans, I think the mood around the club has been lifted by our previous 2 results, but that shouldn't take away from what was a fairly poor transfer window. There's no hiding that, you know. It was common knowledge that Alex Neil was still after a goalkeeper, a left back and striker in this transfer window. In the end, none of those deals got over the line, and it's felt a little bit like Preston have stood still in this transfer window. I do like the additions of Tom Bayliss. I think that one for the future, he will be a brilliant buy for us, potentially a long-term replacement for Paul Gallagher. Also, Patrick Bauer's already had an effect on us. I think we've looked stronger at the back in that area, but there still remains to be a little bit of doubt in my mind that if the same injuries creep up from last season, I still feel as if we're a little bit light in some areas for quality. David Nugent was a bit of a sentimental signing. I can't really see him scoring many goals for us this season, and of course the main loss has been Callum Robinson, with his replacement being Andre Green coming into the squad. Tom Bayliss, 2 free transfers and a loan. It wasn't really the summer that a lot of North End fans were expecting going into this season, and although I do like some of the additions that we have made, I think we could have done a lot more in this window. For North End, I'll give us a 5 out of 10, not the best. Middlesbrough are another one of the clubs where I like the business that they have done, but I can't help but feel like they should have done a little bit more in this window to back Woodgate. They needed to address their fullbacks. They've done that with 2 young players coming in Dig Steele and Bowler. I think that those 2 will go on and do well for Borough over the next few years. Marcus Brown I've already liked the look of, but I still feel as if a couple of injuries pop up to some of their attacking players, they'll be left a little bit short in that area, and I feel like they could have done with another centre-back as well. For Borough's rating, I'm sort of between a 5 and a 6. I'll be kind of give them a 6, but I think they could have done a little bit more in that window. Brentford were by far one of the most interesting sides to watch throughout the transfer window, and overall, I think they've done some brilliant business. I think that their whole recruitment policy is probably one of the best in the Championship. They've improved their defence, which was a weakness there last season, bringing in Pinnock and Janssen and David Raya. Midfield looks a lot stronger, and they've also added some exciting wide options. Obviously, to fund all the incomings, there have been some pretty major outgoings from Brentford, the likes of Ezri Konsa, Romain Soyuz, and especially Neil Maupay. Maupay obviously being the biggest loss out of those players, but even looking at some of the players that Brentford have managed to keep hold of, keeping hold of Ben Rama is going to be massive for their season, Ollie Watkins as well. Overall for Brentford, I'm going to give their window a 9 out of 10. I really do think that some of the new additions they brought into the squad could really flourish throughout this season, and if they kept hold of Neil Maupay, it would be a 10 out of 10, but even despite losing him, I still think they'll go on and have a good year. Stoke have had a very busy transfer window. They weren't messing around early on. They brought in a lot of new faces. They've looked to utilise free transfers and loans especially. Creativity was a real problem for Stoke last season. They've looked to address that with the likes of Mark Duffy and Nick Powell. They'll be hoping they'll be scoring a few more goals this season as well, with the likes of Scott Hogan and Lee Gregory coming in. They've shifted a couple of the big earners from their last season, and with the European transfer market still being open, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple more faces leaving in the next few weeks. The success of this transfer window for Stoke all depends on how these new players gel into a squad, and there are some decent names in there, although I can't help but feel like there is still a bit of lack of pace in that team. Overall for Stoke, I'll give them a 7 out of 10. I think they have got a squad in there who, if set up in the right way, could be in for a successful season. It's just a question of whether that'll actually be the case. Newly promoted Luton Town up next, and they've done some good deals. Another club who's looked to take full advantage of the loan system and pick up some free transfers. The only deal that they did splash out on was Simon Sluga coming in as their new goalkeeper for the season. They've looked to add championship experience and look to improve the core group of players who's coming up to the league this season. Obviously, the 2 major outgoings from Luton have been James Justin and Jack Stacey. It remains to be seen whether their defence will be strong enough this season for them to survive in the league, but I think they have given themselves a good chance with some of the players they brought in. Midfield's looking good. I'm interested to see how Izzy Brown can get on over a full season. Overall for Luton, I'll give them a 6 out of 10. It was a solid window for them. Have they done enough to survive though? time will tell. Derby fans have had an eventful summer to say the least, and I like a lot of the additions they made into this squad. Christian Bielik I think is an absolutely fantastic buy. Matt Clark on loan for this season also vastly improved their defensive options. You still feel as if maybe they're lacking a little bit of creativity, but the likes of Kieran Dowell and Jamie Patterson will look to address that going forward. And of course they somehow managed to pull off the signature of Wayne Rooney, who's set to join them in January. And they've lost quite a bit of deadwood from last season and look to lower the age of the average squad. So overall for Derby, I'll give them an 8 out of 10. I don't think it's been a bad window at all for them. QPR have been incredibly busy and they have had a massive turnover of players as they've looked to completely reinvent the squad going into this season. It goes without saying that Luke Freeman and Luongo will be big losses for them, but the clubs look to go under a new direction under Mark Warburton, and considering the budget that Warburton had to work with, I think they potentially picked up some gems along the way this season. I think that QPR are probably one of the best examples who have really utilised the loan market well in this window, and some of the deals they picked up on free transfers as well, absolutely fantastic. The likes of Jeff Cameron, Johan Barber, Mark Pugh, getting Naki Wells back on loan on deadline day was a good move for QPR. Overall for them, I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10. I think there's a lot of optimism going around QPR for this upcoming season now. It's a new group of players that have come in, and I do see a bit of quality in that list. Hull City's transfer window has been a success by the simple fact that Grosicki and Jared Bowen are still out of the club, when at the start of the window it was looking pretty unlikely that that would be the case. In terms of some of the incomings that have come into the club though, I'm still a little bit unsure of the majority of them. If they do have the quality to step up to the Championship, people like Josh McGuinness, who wasn't particularly great at Bolton, De Silva Lopez, who couldn't really get in the Wigan side, George Honeyman, who's been a little bit on and off with Sunderland. I do like the addition of Tommy's. I think that that will be a very good addition for Hull. Overall for them, I'm going to give them sort of a 6.5. I like the fact that they kept hold of key players, just not sure on some of the incomings. West Brom are a club who I do think have smashed it this transfer window. They managed to keep hold of a lot of key players, the likes of Kieran Gibbs, Hegazi, Matt Phillips, and they've added real quality into that squad, and they've got some really good deals on players as well. People like Semi Ajayi, Daniel Furlong remains, so they've all come in for decent deals. Pereira and Kravinovic on loan deals I think are fantastic options, and they've looked to offset the loss of goals by losing Galen Rodriguez with the likes of Zaha and Charlie Austin coming in. I think they've improved the spine of the squad that was there from last season. They've added creativity into the midfield, which I think was very important. I think under a manager like Bilic, West Brom really could take a few people by surprise this season. For West Brom, I'm going to give them a 9 out of 10. I would have given them a 10 if they got Dwight Gale back, but overall, very successful window. I'd give it a 9. Millwall were definitely in need of shaking up their squad from last season. Things turned a little bit sour at points, but after this transfer window, I think they have done that. They've really freshened up the squad. They've strengthened key areas and places where they were struggling last season. Goals shouldn't be an issue for them. I especially like the addition of Conor Mahoney. I think they've done really well to get that deal over the line. I think if he can have a consistent season, they potentially got a real gem on their hands now. They've addressed the goalkeeper situation there last season as well, and overall, I think Millwall fans are happy at the moment. I'll give them a 7 out of 10. And then we'll finish the video off with Barnsley. Now, if you look at the average age of the players that Barnsley have brought in this transfer window, it's clear to see what age range they were targeting. It's quite a youthful group they've got in there with a lot of potential to go forward into the future. I like a lot of the additions they've made, and although there are a few unknowns in there, we've already seen bursts of quality from them in Barnsley's opening 2 games so far, especially on the season opener against Fulham, where I thought there were some very good debuts. The only real drawback from Barnsley's window has been some of the players they've lost. You know, earlier on in the window they lost Liam Lindsay and Ethan Pinnock, Adam Davis as well, and then towards the end they lost Kiefer Moore, but I think they've done a fairly good job in replacing all those players. And for Barnsley's transfer window, I'm going to give them a 7.5 out of 10. I wouldn't have given them a bit higher if they didn't lose Kiefer Moore so late on, but overall I think that Barnsley fans are excited going into this season, and rightly so. But guys, there you have it. There are all my rankings for every single Championship club and what I made of their transfer window. So do you guys agree? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you did go on to enjoy, make sure you do leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Get all your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you do subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But apart from that guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.